Welcome, everybody. Working group meeting number 4, I believe.
Morning.
Our agenda today, we want to try to cover home occupation a little bit. And then we're going to be discussing some municipal uses, as well as perhaps touching upon the accessory apartment bylaw. So with that, unless Michaela has anything to add right off the bat, I'm going to hand it over to Bob Mitchell and we'll get started.
Well, I'm going to hand it over to Michaela. I thought the home occupation was on the first item on the agenda.
Michaela,
Yep.
Is your audio working?
Yep. Hi, guys. Yep. So the home occupation bylaw, that is up on the agenda. Hopefully everyone got the document. We went through it last week. That was the final document with all the changes and revisions and additions or items we stayed in. That was kind of our one final document. So hopefully everyone was able to take a look at it and they agreed with it. We did send it over to the Bobs, but I think they're going to review it separately, it sounds like, and let us know their thoughts on the final document. Unless you guys have any thoughts right now.
So this is Noreen. Hi. My copy still has green on it, referencing Barnstable and Dartmouth.
For the first two, yeah, there should be a note that says I just needed to go through it and include that language so it makes it to one cohesive one. That's the only section that should have green. If you go through the remainder of the document, there shouldn't be any more green. I did leave the town name so that the Bobs, when going through it, would be able to, if they're seeing it, kind of understand, okay, this language was added and from where, so that there was some type of knowledge about where it came from. But that should be the only green, is that one beginning section.
Okay, because I guess what I was wondering is, it sounded like you were suggesting this was the final language. And of course, it wouldn't be prudent to have Barnstable and Dartmouth printed into the bylaw.
No, I'll still be going through it and removing the towns. I just wanted, when the Bobs are reviewing it, that they could understand some type of, okay, yeah, so this is where that language came from. Once I get kind of the head nod from them, I'll go through with that final fine tooth comb and remove the sections where the towns are. And, we can make sure that numbers make sense. Those, I'll say kind of more clerical issues, as long as they agree with the actual bylaw language itself. Does that kind of make sense?
So
is it your intention then that what's in green now on the copy for today, once the town names are corrected, that the green language will remain? The
green language that is only on the first page. If you look at all the rest of the document, there should be no other green.
Right. Yes,
it's just that one little beginning section.
But I'm asking if what is green, the intent section,
Mhm.
will remain once it's corrected for the town name.
I need to incorporate that language so that it becomes one more cohesive language. So I just needed to go through and include that language into one paragraph. I think we'll be removing the Dartmouth green. It seems that's already covered with the section that you had asked, Charlotte, and the Barnstable language. So I'll be removing that part.
Could I suggest that you put the Dartmouth language first, leave the separation of the two paragraphs, and include both of them so that it's really clear? I think that they both help. They're slightly repetitive, but not completely, because the Dartmouth language is so succinct.
Okay. So we'll have the expressed intent to preserve the residential character of the neighborhoods. And then we'll do that section. Then we'll put Dartmouth, have a space, and then we'll do Barnstable. Okay. I can definitely.
Yeah, and just let's see how that looks. Also, before we start, Frank, a question came up last night in the planning board meeting about where there have been mistakes, true mistakes. For example, for business 3, leaving out that mixed residential and commercial is allowed in business 3 on the chart. what happens there? Do you have to wait for town meeting to correct that mistake? Or can a real estate agent who raised the question go forward with the understanding as it was before?
I think that'd be pretty dangerous to go forward with the understanding that it was as before. I think the biggest question here, and we would certainly want to have Maura look into this, but if it is truly a mistake, in other words, if it was something that was enacted by town meeting, but the language didn't get into the printed version, final version, that's a mistake. But if town meeting didn't put it in and that was the mistake, then you've got to go to town meeting to correct it.
Thank you.
Yeah, could I just add something there? Jed brought that to my attention, and the language that's in the use table for the business for mixed use with residential comes directly from the business redevelopment zoning district in the old bylaw. That is the only business section that has that language in the old bylaw.
So business 3 did not have it.
The business 1, 2, or 3 did not have either that language specifically or any equivalent language about, allowing mixed use with residential zoning districts. So all we did was move existing language into the new one. And at no time did anybody ever mention to us, oh, we allow, the town allows mixed uses in the B2 or B3 district. We never heard that.
No.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
So it's not a mistake,
Not a mistake. And now we know who made the mistake. Okay.
but it's perfectly fine if you already have been allowing mixed use. It's not perfectly fine you've been
No.
allowing mixed uses if a bylaw doesn't say you can. But if you want to, then just add, just change the no to yes in whatever, B2 or B3, and that fixes the problem. But
Okay.
So that probably came from the fact that when they did business redevelopment, none of the B3 or B2 parcels were included.
Right.
I remember when they were doing the business redevelopment, because I'm actually in the business redevelopment, and that was a question at the time. And they specifically left B3 out.
That's correct, Bob.
Good. No mistake. All right.
Since I came in a few minutes late, can I ask where we have the title, home occupation, and we put in parens service? To me, when I look at it in print, it's not clear because we're trying to get it away from two different things, the home occupation and the home-based service business.
Right.
And yet, back at the very end, we refer to home-based service business.
Right.
So is there somehow instead of service, can we put in home-based business in the parens? So that there is a closer transition. And then when it becomes a special permit, home-based service business makes sense. You're inserting service, or up here in the intent, we need to make it clear that we're referring to maybe three different kinds, which we had referred to: professional offices, home-based business, where they may be creating stuff in their home, or the service business where they have bobcats and stuff like that.
So what if you essentially combine them all in the title and you say home occupation service business, right? So that, people don't parse out, well, I don't fit under this category because I'm on X instead of a Y, right? That you sort of indicate to everybody that you're trying to be all encompassing.
Mm-hmm. That would work.
I was sort of struck by the same problem and came up with a slightly different solution. It seemed to me the easiest way to understand is to make the title, rather than home occupation and service in parens, make the title home-based business, because it covers everything, and make sure that we have a definition for business in the definition section, which we do not now. If you
That
look
would
at that-
definitely do it. I was going to put that just in parens because
Yeah,
we
just
thought,
make the whole thing home-based business, because when you look up the general word business, It
Includes
covers
that.
those other things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You don't
Yes.
have to distinguish among service, occupation, business.
Right.
Good.
So
Home-based business.
home-based business.
And then throughout the document, we will just reference home-based business, not
Yeah.
Mhm.
home occupation and not HBSB. It will be home-based business.
Right.
Mhm.
And be sure in the definition section that we do a general business definition, and the one from Webster or whatever the Bobs think would be the clearest definition for business. I wonder if you need to put somewhere in small print, replaces previous home occupation and home-based service.
Do you want to say replace, or do you want to say sort of indicate that you're merging them together?
I don't know, but I don't think putting in parentheses does the work of saying something's replaced, and I don't know what the practice is. And Bob Mitchell is shaking his head. What's your experience, Bob?
Never.
Don't do it.
That
Okay,
just- That just junks up
Right.
bylaws because every time you, not every time, but most times you add an amendment, you're
Yeah.
replacing something.
Right.
You want
Oh,
to say that
okay.
over and over again?
right. All right, thank you.
But I think titling the whole thing home-based business solves the issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Business is the general term now.
Right.
The only other thing I found in this section to question is actually on the run over page under special permit, where it begins, it's the fourth bullet under small letter A. And it's saying trailer over 18 feet in bed length.
Right. It's wrong.
Why is that over 18 feet? What is it about that? What
I don't
about-
think it should be that.
No,
The last meeting, I believe we had a conversation about this. And it had to do with it being registered commercial.
Yeah.
We're in agreement that I don't think that needs to be in there. But at the last meeting, this group wanted it to remain.
I don't think that was what we intended to do.
Okay, if I misunderstood, by all means, please let me know, and I'm happy to revise.
You could have a 50-foot trailer with it's over 18 feet. That's not what we want.
right. Wouldn't it be trailers of any size up to?
Yeah.
Yeah. May I make another correction? We're agreed on that. We're finished with that. Is that correct? The
Yeah.
trailer issue?
Now, does that include people that do like those little attachments to move, I don't know, small equipment or, trash or anything like that?
Well, sorry, I just want to go back to this. So it's saying that company vehicles are trailers that are over 18 feet in bed length. So anything over 18 feet needs a special permit.
Yes.
So that's what we want to keep it as. Because otherwise, if we change it to trailers up to 18 feet, we're saying a 50-foot trailer does not need a special permit, a 12-foot trailer does.
Mhm.
Well, if you're going to limit it,
No.
what's the limit? This isn't clearly limited in any way. So it's trailers of
Yeah,
what size are going to be
Frank,
limited?
am I misreading it, Frank?
And then you go on to say, except as may be permitted by the board. So you're allowing them and then you say, except as may be permitted by the board. I think Charlotte's right. This is confusing.
Well, I don't know if you can. So company vehicles shall be limited to the following types. Trailers over 18 feet in bed length.
But that's not a limitation. You're saying something is limited, but then you're allowing anything.
Right.
That's what
That
I don't
doesn't
understand.
work.
Doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. The purpose was not to get trailers that are too long on a residential lot. That's why we,
Right.
18 feet.
So we don't want big trailers. So
No.
you're limited to trailers under 18 feet. That would make sense.
But
that-
it would, then
That's a
it would
big
read,
trailer.
But then it would read, company vehicles shall be limited to trailers under 18 feet.
Well, it's among the things that, that you're allowed, but are limited to the following types. And the only type of trailer you can have would be one under 18 feet. And I even question the 18 feet because that's a double car length, isn't it?
Yes.
How
Yeah,
big is
that's pretty substantial.
So,
No, it's a car.
Something that the average person would tow.
I
So
thought
I-
we said 18 feet was that was the length that it became a commercial vehicle. I believe that was the discussion at the last meeting last week.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why
I think
18
Bob
feet-
brought that up.
Yeah,
What if-
that's why 18 feet was used as the marker. We had
What if
suggested removing
we-
that section completely.
so I know that we've always been concerned more with the size of the vehicle, like the 13-pound gross vehicle weight.
Mhm.
I think you do need to be able to look at trailers under 18 feet. What if you have, let's say a case of a landscape company that decides to do 12-foot trailers, have them on site, but have 5 of them? Or, I always try to look, how do they get around the bylaws if they're trying to get around us when they're doing the presentations? Couldn't we just said limited to trailers?
Or we could do the same thing, Bob, where it says with the vehicle weight, we could say trailers not to exceed 18 feet in length.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, the gross vehicle weight is usually what catches us on everything more than the trailers, but I've realized that lately on a lot of applications with trailers being so easily available now, a lot of trailers are popping up with the applications. Multiple.
Okay, I think you can solve Bob's problem by taking the S off of trailers.
Yep.
And say a trailer under 18 feet. Or whatever number of feet we decide is long enough for this.
There you go.
Yeah.
So a trailer under some number of feet.
Or should
The
you make
trailer
that, should
18
you,
feet or under.
should you put that A in front of the other things above it, passenger car, minivan?
That would make sense.
Yeah, because it's true of any of them. You could wind up with multiples. But didn't we somewhere else limit the number of these things?
We did.
Up to 4 company vehicles.
Mhm.
Okay, so number 1, and these are all subsidiary to that, 4 company vehicles. So you can't exceed 4 of whatever. So we don't have to worry about how many.
But is a trailer a vehicle? Is a trailer a vehicle?
It's an attachment to a vehicle.
Mhm.
It becomes a vehicle.
So a tractor and a trailer would be one vehicle?
Well, that would be for the zoning board to decide in a particular instance.
And trailers have to have their own license plate.
I think it's a smart move what Charlotte said to untrailer, just put a trailer.
Just a trailer
One trailer.
and not limit the feet.
And actually add in, the whole sentence that Charlotte used with a trailer under 18 feet or under in bed length.
Trailers, just to go back, trailers are not vehicles. So if you register an RV or an RT, recreational vehicle, and then there's recreational trailers. So the trailers are the ones that are towed, the vehicles are the ones that you drive. So the trailers would not be considered vehicles. So I couldn't enforce that if it's in that wording.
So Gary, what do you think would work? What?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
No.
It wasn't you, it was just breaking up.
That's fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So recreational vehicles, recreational trailers, 2 separate things. Same with trailers. They're not vehicles, different categories. So if you want to change that, because I couldn't enforce it, you would have to have recreational, you'd have to have trailers separate or added that language into the limiting amount. So it says, 4 company vehicles. I couldn't enforce that with trailers, unless if that wording is in there.
I think the other thing, as Jonathan points out, you're going to need to be careful with is there could be homeowners who, as Jonathan points out, have like ATVs or something that they load into a trailer and pull. And so there needs to be perhaps separate carve out for them as opposed to,
But they're not
But
running.
that's not a business.
But these
No,
are
no,
under
no.
businesses only.
This is
Right.
only for businesses.
right. But, you know, when you're running a business out of your home, there's a little bit of difficulty separating church and state, right?
Well, we do the home occupation permits, we actually list the actual vehicles.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's why I always try to include the actual vehicle, the actual trailer, and also require that they stay as, registered commercial vehicles. So I think it's easy enough to handle in a permit setting, as long as we have in the bylaw that we can do it that way. If Jonathan has an issue, I understand what he's saying, because it says trailers are considered a vehicle, then you could still keep in here the trailers 18 feet or under, but in the other section where we limit the vehicles, also put a line in there specific to trailers.
Right, just get it out of that sentence about company vehicles,
Yep,
make it its own bullet point, and the bullet point would say a trailer under 18 feet.
yep, and that would cover Jonathan, so if he has to enforce anything, he has something to go
The
with.
trailer.
All right, so if you have somebody who has, say, a kid who has an ATV and they're also a landscaper, are they going to be prohibited from having that second trailer, or how's that negotiated?
Well, the trailer would have to be registered as a commercial vehicle, and if they're registering it as a commercial vehicle, they can't use it for personal use. So unless they could register the ATVs commercial, they wouldn't be able to use it.
No, I just mean that if somebody has something, I don't know, say you've got a huge parcel and you've got a kid that has an ATV, and now you want to have a landscaping business and you want to have a trailer associated with that. I guess we're just permitting the commercial use,
Yes,
not discussing.
right.
But when you talk about what's stored on the premises, clearly they both are, right?
But your permits would only be based on what's stored on the premises that has the commercial value for the business. So
Yeah,
you wouldn't be
can't-
counting a
if you're
personal trailer.
landscaper, you can't regulate their home lawnmower that they just use to cut their own personal grass. You can only regulate what is associated directly with the business. You're not regulating their home usages. That
Oh,
ATV
right.
is not
Yeah,
allowed.
yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking about people who, might have different trailers depending on what they're looking to tow, right?
But it would only matter if they're using those trailers for the business. If they're towing things around their yard, you can tow as much as you want.
Well, just an example, of a landscape example, if you're trying to limit this to one trailer, a landscape is going to have more than one trailer. They'll have a flatbed, they'll bring the lawnmowers and, all of that, and they often will have a sided trailer to dump all the weeds and, brush and everything in to take away. That's two trailers. That's a normal part of a business for a landscaper. Just one example.
Right, so.
I don't know what the
so-
answer is, but, limiting it to one trailer could be a big limitation.
Yeah, it could.
Yeah, especially if somebody has the ability to screen that, maybe there'd be some evaluation on a case-by-case basis, but I guess, yeah, you want to provide some parameters where you're talking about essentially residential neighborhoods, right?
I think that's where the recommendation to just remove this language, because, that will give the ZBA discretion for you guys to look and say, hey, you're a landscaping business. Maybe you do need two trailers, and that's okay, but, maybe you're a welder, and what do you need a trailer for? What are you moving around? You don't need any trailers. So, that can be put into a decision from the ZBA.
Okay, but if we're going to put it in a separate bullet point anyway about trailers, just to remove it from that language that's unclear. And we're going to allow trailers only up, we're trying to limit business use in residential areas. If it's grown to be a multiple trailer business, they ought to get
Wow.
out of that neighborhood.
I mean, is 2 trailers too much?
Oh, could be.
Yeah. I mean, is it? That's the question.
Well, but I think that's where the ZBA will have the discretion to decide based on the case, based on the applicant, based on the neighborhood, to make that decision. You know, using this bullet point with the limited language, you're really not giving the ZBA any discretion about it. They can only
No,
allow.
If you confer discretion on the board, it's obligatory to give them the standards and criteria that they should apply in exercising that discretion. So, I mean, every time you give discretion to a board, you need to take the following step and say, in the exercise of that discretion, what standards and guidelines and criteria are to be used in making the decision.
And size of property seems to me to be one of those. If somebody's got 5,000 square foot lot and wants to put a landscaping business, that's one thing. But if somebody's got 5 acres and
Yeah.
wants to put a landscaping business, that's an entirely different scenario.
Well, but what's not different is it's still in a residential neighborhood. And
I
it
know,
could be
but-
the 5 acres are all backland, and the neighbors are all lined up side by each along the main road. That's the commonest circumstance. And you're trying to
then you
keep the residential look to it.
Then you have to get into what portion of the property, what is the visual impact on the neighborhood? If it's
They're in there.
on the back 40, it wouldn't be, but if it's up near the street, it would be.
Yeah, I guess the other part too is if you're allowing somebody to store 4 company vehicles at their home, and if they are a landscape business and say they have one other person who comes and gets a truck and a trailer. Yeah.
Well, I think that taking this out makes some sense, because in the next section Roman numeral II, the first bullet, it says all exterior storage, including trailers. So it's clear that we allow multiple trailers right there. Give this discretion to the board to figure out. And just take out trailers as being permitted company vehicles.
If we
That's the
wanted
best
to,
solution.
it's a good solution, but if we also wanted to manage the length, to limit the length, right there, we could say including trailers under 18 feet in bed length, or not to exceed. One of the two, to try to limit that length if we wanted to. I don't know if you want to or not.
So I don't know if this makes a difference or not, but I tried to look up trailer and see what the definitions are, and everything seems to say that trailers are defined as a vehicle.
They are, they're just not a motor vehicle.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so if we are doing vehicles, it would have to be included in that section
Well,
as
wouldn't
one of
have
the
to be.
four, as one of the vehicles.
Frank's solution, though, is really quite elegant. And it does leave the
I like that solution.
to the ZBA. How often has it turned up, to get over 18 feet, you've practically got a car carrier.
Mhm.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and if I agree with Frank. I mean, if you're able to show that you can completely screen a 50-foot trailer in a residential neighborhood on a 5,000 square foot lot.
That's sounding pretty outrageous.
Yeah, but I mean, if you can.
I mean,
prove-
I think when you're at the point in time where you're at that level of industrial use, you should not be storing on a residential lot,
Right.
right?
Yeah, no, mine was a bit of an exaggeration, of course. I don't think anyone's going to be screening a 50-foot trailer on a 5,000 square foot lot. But Frank, I think I like that solution.
Do you want to just ignore the 18 feet or under?
I
think
don't know that we can just, that's a decision that somebody who really knows what they're talking about has to make. I'm not sure that I do.
Right, and they can come before the board and make their argument. Whereas if you just, it seems like we have got consensus to delete the phrase from the company vehicles shall be limited bullet. Just take out the whole thing about trailers.
Mhm.
And the only mention of trailers is going to be under italics 2, exterior storage, including trailers.
Would you all mind if I share my screen just momentarily so
Go ahead.
I can show you the corrections live as we do them and you can hopefully agree that I'm doing it correct?
That's a good idea.
All right, just a moment, please. Okay. All right, so we have removed trailer from this section here,
Yep,
and we're leaving this part, which says all trailers shall be completely screened from view. That
Mhm.
leaves the size
Yeah,
to the applicant to prove that they can screen whatever
Yeah.
size that they are asking for. And, you know, for the ZBA to review and
Yeah.
ultimately allow or deny.
Mhm.
sounds good.
Okay. And I, just to go back, sorry, I did send it out a little bit earlier, but just so you guys can see the beginning of the intent. I moved the Dartmouth section up, left Barnstable in, spaced it, so removed it in green, just so everyone can see it. And I'll send this out, of course, to everyone again, but
Mhm.
just while I have it up.
I would still take out the names of the towns. I think Bob's the Bob
yes,
and figure it out or trust us or ask if they have a question.
Okay,
Could-
part
could
of
you
it is
go back-
also for me to know.
They probably wrote half of them anyway, so.
Could you go back to that top section again for a minute, Michaela, the Barnstable and Dartmouth?
You want, I'm sorry, you asked to go to the intent section, right?
Well, no, yeah, what, so that's what you had under here, so,
How
so
about
that's,
changing that-
that's
just cha-
longer just because you added the first sentence. It just looks so much longer than the copies we have here. Was anything else added in?
Nope, that first section should have been in there. And then, so previously it should have looked,
So you just merged the
Like
top
this.
intent section with,
yeah, it
The
should have looked
Dartmouth.
like this before. And then all I did was move it up.
Okay, but what the other thing you need to do, Michaela, is you need to, in the very first sentence, you need to change home occupations to home-based businesses.
I'm gonna have to do that through the whole document, but I
Yeah.
can't do it while, you know, while the meeting's going and give accurate attention to what everyone's saying. So I'm gonna have to go through it and make those revisions.
Okay, good, thanks.
Michaela and everybody, on this one, now that you're moving things around here, I'm noticing sort of an inconsistent style. So the first sentence of 9.5A is intent. The second sentence is purpose. The third sentence goes back to intent. So you should start, this should be purpose and intent. And then the first sentence should be the Dartmouth sentence, that
Right.
you start with what the purpose is. And then you get down to the more specific intent and you put the two intent sections together.
okay.
Bob, this may be very picky. Is there some useful difference between an intent and a purpose?
Oh, yeah.
Could we
My-
settle on one word rather than two?
You can, I think, what I usually see is purpose is a more broader statement, a more broad statement, not a more broader statement, a more broad. And then intent, as you have here, gets into a little more specificity.
Mhm.
There's no magic here. You could use one word, I mean, you know, but,
Yeah, but the difference to me between intent and purpose, you know, you may intend to do good, but in fact you've done poorly. So intention is a good intention, but it's not
Right.
as strong as purpose.
right.
Yeah, so maybe we could just go with purpose.
Yeah, just go with purpose and drop intent entirely.
I think the legislature uses purpose and intent. And it's because lawyers like to use three words when one would do. And I think the idea of using a single word is excellent.
Well, one doesn't wish to be rude, but feeding lawyers proclivities isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
I also think it's important to note that, you know, we're not going to copy exactly the language, or at least that was my impression, that we weren't going to just take someone else's language and copy it directly.
Right.
That we were going to sort of wordsmith our own things. So my understanding was that, you know, Michaela and I would sort of get or view of this recording and sort of try to guess it to what that would be. And then we'd send out a final copy to everyone to review for the last time before we send it off to the Bobs for their final revisions.
Yeah,
Or review.
most, and that's why, again, like I said, some of the, there is still HBSB in there because the idea was for the Bobs to kind of review the language that we had agreed on last time, just to make sure that what we had already decided was kind of legal even, and, that we weren't way outside our bounds. And then, we can go through and make some of those smaller edits, to get rid of the HBSB, but to make sure that the direction we were moving in as a group was correct.
Michaela, a fairly trivial change. If you could go down to 5BA near the bottom, the last section.
5BA, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not 9.5B 1A. Yeah. If I would suggest taking any out and put the, because this seems to go beyond home occupations that are governed by this section.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. Can we go back up to the top of that page, the very first line? Nope.
I'm sorry.
It's where
Just
it
this one?
says, yeah, there is no storage. It should be there shall be no storage. And then take out the word Barnstable.
I'm gonna leave those in because I need
Okay.
to know where these bylaws are coming from in case a question comes up. I understand that while you guys are reviewing it, you want to see the most final draft, but if the Bobs have a question, I need to be able to know where the language came from so I can better explain my rationale.
Okay,
Would it be useful also to change the color of the font? For example, if Barnstable appears at the end of a paragraph with 3 sentences, you want to make sure that the whole paragraph or just the last sentence. So
We
that
had done that in the draft
did
one
that.
before,
Okay.
but as we were going through, I took out the coloring so that we
Okay.
knew what changes we had accepted
okay.
or not accepted. I'm happy to change it when I send it over to you guys to review. I just want to make sure if you guys have a question that, because this came up before when I was putting it together, I didn't put a town in. And I spent a ridiculous, Jed can attest to this. I spent a ridiculous amount of time Googling where I found that bylaw because I had no idea, couldn't find the town. It was a long time.
I have a really quick question. At the very beginning, are we putting in additional text to make it clear the difference between home occupation by right and home occupation by special permit? Are we still agreeing that we want to do that?
I
didn't
think we need to.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because people need clarity about where and when you need relief.
I don't
So
think we need to.
Jed, where, or Michaela, somebody, where would that be? The requirements, 9.5A requirements, these are all by right? And you don't hit by special permit until you get to B?
Yeah, I didn't think we were adding in language because, and again, maybe I'm just misremembering, so that happens a lot. I thought we had felt that the language right under special permit for criteria, where we talk about, again, we repeated the noise, vibration, flare, fumes, odors. That was enough of a criteria to say, if you hit any of those things, then you need to come for a special permit. But am I?
That is, I think that that's correct. And it looks to me like your first sentence under 9.5B criteria which may have possible impacts from those things, because the ones by right are the ones that don't have possible impacts.
That could be solved by just changing that criteria. Changing it to certain home occupations shall require a special permit as follows. Because that emphasizes that there is a category of certain home occupations that will require a special permit.
home businesses.
But Pat, there may not be. You could run a very quiet landscaping business.
No, because what it says is these things require a special permit. That's why under that 9.5B1 criteria, certain home occupations shall require a special permit as follows, as follows.
It's gonna be home businesses now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Home-based business. Wait, what did we decide? I'm sorry. Home-based business.
Yeah. Because that tells you that everything before then is generalized. But then when you get down to these particular kinds that create fumes or something like that potentially, you have to look further and get a special permit.
I don't see where it says particular kinds. It's not naming not naming
No, it's not.
types of businesses, and you wouldn't
That's
want to get
true.
into that.
And I also think I want to change it back because I want to be careful about saying certain home-based businesses, plural, because then it becomes, well, I'm only doing one, not two.
Okay,
But it doesn't really read that well if I say certain home-based business shall require, because that just sounds
true.
not.
Okay, flip it back again.
But it still leaves the issue that somebody, presuming the building inspector, has to make a determination, because all it says is a home occupation which may have possible impacts to the neighborhood. Well, somebody has to make a determination as to which home occupations may or may not have possible impacts that then would require a special permit. That's a pretty open-ended language.
So do you think it is beneficial to list types of businesses, or I guess how would you recommend remedying?
I don't know,
That
I have to think about it. Is this, this is Barnstable language, so.
Yeah,
I'd have to think about it and maybe do a little research on myself, but maybe this is okay, but I don't, you might want to even ask Barnstable, how do they actually process this language? Who's making this determination and how?
When you look at this, what we're talking about is if it has any outdoor implications to the home-based business. If you can do whatever you're doing within the four walls of your home and you don't have any excess parking or trailers or that kind of thing, you don't need a special permit.
But what about use of the whole home as opposed to bringing it to a third or 30%?
That just makes it much broader. Could we solve the first problem first? I think one way to approach this would be first under requirements. I'm not sure requirements is the right word. We could come back to that, but change the order of things that are named. Outward appearance. We have said that our intention is to maintain the outward, to preserve the residential character. So outward appearance is our most important criteria. Outward appearance, I think, should be number one. And gross floor area, a very picky thing that is invisible, should be last. It's the least important among these things. The second most important is negative impacts. So if we're allowing things by right, and that's what it would be. And it should say under that where it's requirements, the language should go on to say, home-based businesses are allowed by right if the following are true.
wait, I'm sorry. I think I got lost a little bit there. So
Okay, I'm trying to make 2 points at once, which is a poor thing to do. Under 249.5A.
oh, we're on A. Okay, I'm sorry. I was on B.
Requirements. These are home-based businesses that meet the following requirements are allowed by right. And then under that, it begins with, it's going to rank order these numbered items by their importance based on our general purpose. And our general purpose deals with maintaining the character of the neighborhood. So outward appearance would be number 1, negative impacts would be number 2, traffic and parking would be number 3. We've got this as if we can't tell what's important and what's not. And
So,
merchandise- yeah,
so just be aware regarding the gross floor area. The reason that has so much importance is because the gross floor area is the actual size of the business.
right.
And that directly affects all of the other items. That's why it's so limited to that 30%.
I understand that, Bob, but it's the only one that actually is invisible.
It is, but when you're
Five
doing the
percent.
actual permitting, and this could change, but that's actually where everyone has always started, because if they can't meet that, they can't go forward.
Well, I have a quick question. Does the numeration matter anyways? Because you need to hit all of these requirements anyways. So does it, I mean, I don't know that we're listing them in necessarily in importance, because you need to have all of them. So they're all equally as important, but I don't know, maybe someone else.
I don't know, it just strikes me as illogical the way they are. And it could be that everyone heads for the gross floor area because it's the only quantifiable thing there.
I think that's why, yeah, it is quantifiable, and even when they do all the applications, because if they cannot even make that 30%, they will not even go forward with anything. They can't do anything. It basically stops. They can always adjust some of the outward appearance. They can adjust some of the vehicles, but the 30% is a constant that just can't change. We've had a lot of people in the past that have tried to do businesses larger than the 30%. And then it couldn't. But what they were applying for larger than 30% just made automatic changes to everything else on the list, parking, traffic, because the 30% was, because it would be so large. So once you go over the 30%, you automatically get the increase in the traffic, the increase in the parking. It's just an easy place to start. And I don't think these have a priority issue anyways. I'm just telling you that when they do applications, and even when council is representing stuff for an applicant, their main concern first has always been the 30% size of the actual business.
So you would need to move gross floor area back to 1, is that?
So if you wanted a big business, all you have to have is a bigger building?
Yeah.
Well, you're limited. You can't. That's the whole thing. You can't. You know, it's the 30% is what the town specifically locked in at one time, because I think they learned from applications and things that came in that once it started going over that size, they had issues with every other aspect of the bylaw.
I think if you change the language there to shall not, you're being a little bit more explicit with a prospective home business, right? And you're telling them, hey, look, you cannot use more than 30% your home for this purpose, period.
Yeah, shall not.
Wait, so I just,
Better
sorry to
wording.
interrupt. I just want to make sure. So are we moving gross floor from number 1? Are we moving gross floor area to number 1?
I would like it under as number 2, because you hit the outward appearance first, if you can't do it without changing anything. And then number 2, if you can't do it within the 30%.
You're out.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, does the numeration even matter? Because you have to hit all of these requirements anyways. So whether it's number 1 or number 5, doesn't really matter. If you hit 1, 2, and 3, but you can't hit 4 and 5, you're still being booted out.
Sure.
So I'm happy, you know, it's not an issue to move them. I just don't know if.
No, as long as you keep that gross floor area within 1 or 2, so that when people are
Mhm.
looking over, those are the first couple things they see, because that's the first couple issues that they'll know right away if they can comply or not without reading anything else.
Right.
Okay, so we'll leave outward appearance, gross floor area, negative impacts, and this went with negative impacts.
And because this is all coming under the part that's by right, I would think you would leave the language is allowed provided that not more than, because that matches the idea of by right.
Yep. But Charlotte, I think your suggestion of under requirements, that if you can meet all of these things, then you can do that by right. Because we were saying, okay, how are they going to know whether they can do something by right or they need a special permit? That has to be better defined.
So in my understanding that a home occupation, home-based business cannot exceed 30% ever, even by special permit.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
correct.
So then we should probably separate that language, because I would read that as a by right use. I can't exceed 30, but by special permit, maybe I can. And it doesn't seem clear to me in the special permit section, unless I'm missing it.
Yeah, I think it could, excuse me, just be a little more explicit in, when you're describing the zoning board granting a special permit, then under no circumstances are they going to grant a home-based business that exceeds that 30%.
Yeah, so just have that information in both sections, by right and special permit.
Yeah, but in no case shall the total floor area of the home occupation exceed 30%. I'm just
Michaela,
trying to see where I would put it.
just remember that we'll have a recording of this too, so don't make yourself bananas right now
Yeah,
trying to move
I'll,
everything around. Because it's a lot to keep track of.
All right, good.
maybe I could just add it into this section here.
Mhm.
The home occupation may have possible impacts to the neighborhood relating to outward appearance. Oh, we were just gonna put that back. And so to correct the section, but in no case. So kind of lists when you could possibly get a special permit, and then it just will say, but in no case,
Mhm.
and you get one for more than 30.
Oh, the next sentence down there, the special permit shall be issued to the applicant only for his or her residence instead of at.
Should we put their residence?
No
Yeah,
resident.
there is the, Michaela, it's kind of a duplicative language here. So if you could just slide your screen up a little bit. So right at the beginning, criteria, special permit shall be required for, you should add in there, special permit shall be required by the zoning board of appeals.
Mm.
And then we're gonna delete language that's duplicate down further. So then down, then under A, that whole first phrase can be deleted. The home occupation shall require, and then start the sentence as, in acting on the special permit, the board may approve. That cleans it up a little bit.
Yep.
Makes sense.
And that let's see, where is it? There was a citation in that first one, the first paragraph there, and it's Barnstable bylaw, 240-125C. We're gonna have to put that in as whatever ours is if we want to reference it.
Yeah.
Just hot, yeah.
They Barnstable must use E code.
Yeah.
Yep.
Every time you see that 240, you know it's E code.
Yep. There's quite a few that use decode. Most of this language was all unchanged and was in our bylaws as existing.
Mhm.
And then again, like I know for this, like I'll have to go back and change the HVSB, but that formatting I'll go back and do.
Under small Roman numeral number 4, the third bullet down, there shall be no running or servicing of motorized equipment used in connection. A word is left out. It should be with the home base.
I'm sorry, the fourth bullet or,
The third bullet down,
oh, okay, I'm sorry,
small Roman numeral 1.
numeral 1.
And what did I just say? I'm sorry.
4, right?
Small 4, yeah.
And this one, there shall be no running.
Yeah, right at the end there, it says in connection, the word with has been left out. Go
Oh.
back up. There shall be
It's-
no
it's
running.
the
or
first
ser-
line,
No, no,
yeah.
no. Up, yep.
At the end of the first line.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Using connection.
with.
Sorry.
Is running seems to me like a pretty archaic word. Running the equipment. Do people still use that word? And usually you say operating the equipment.
I'm happy to change it to operating.
Just
That makes sense.
What's the word that people use when trucks are just left turned on?
Idling.
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 Thought that that's what was being referred to here is idling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought so too, because operating and idling are not the same.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah,
that-
so
that-
the zoning board, when they're giving permits for particularly the 40B, we do specify that vehicles cannot idle at the premises prior to the commencement of work hours. And maybe, I don't know how you're gonna do that at somebody's house, though.
Isn't there actually a state law that was passed about company
This thing-
vehicles being able to idle for a certain amount of time? Like over 5 minutes, you can't idle your car.
Yeah,
It's
but
not-
think
oh,
about
only on school
homeowners. Yeah.
It's only on school grounds, I think.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you
School
know,
buses.
yeah,
But
and-
if it's a homeowner, it's still a business. So it's still.
yeah,
being-
but good luck if you're using your truck for your personal use and business. And you get somebody who stops at their home, runs in to get something in the wintertime and comes back up. Now, they should turn the vehicle off, but are you going to be calling for enforcement if they don't?
Well, operation, is running the motor, because, for example, you can be convicted of operating under the influence if you just have the key in the ignition.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't make a habit of that anyways. I was just.
all right,
yeah, it's true. Yeah.
all right.
Wouldn't this be really clear if it said idling, operating, or servicing?
Well, you don't want people servicing their vehicles at their home.
Well, you definitely don't. So that's already included. So we're
Mhm.
really just talking about replacing running. If running wasn't clear, to replace it with idling, operating, or servicing.
Yeah, there's an anti-idling law that for 5 minutes. The law limits unnecessary engine idling to 5 minutes. So,
For everybody?
Where,
What's the reference for the law?
Good luck with that.
It has to have a reference. It can't just be a general.
Because think about it, how many people in the winter have their vehicles running for how long before they go down and get it in so that it's warmed up, right?
But isn't the enforcement of this entire bylaw dependent on the neighbors complaining? And the neighbors aren't going to complain for an occasional thing like that. They're going to complain if there's a practice of people idling their trucks there.
yeah, so there, Noreen, there are exceptions if you're idling it to clear your windshield to defrost it, because that's a safety hazard, so you have to allow for that.
Right, but you don't want to have it be that enforcement gets called based on, 2.5 minutes as opposed to 2 minutes or something. I mean,
Well, and then the problem with enforcement is they get out there and they've already shut the vehicle off.
all right, so here, you certainly in your nuisance section, you're talking about obnoxious, and I think it's certainly sufficient that if somebody is leaving a vehicle idling all the time, that falls under nuisance essentially, or reasonable, as opposed to, you don't want to try and list every little thing.
I think the reason that it was running or servicing is because you look further down, it's prohibited except for normal business activities in connection with providing services to a customer of the business on the street or way. So I think it intentionally was running the motor. So I think we need to leave that in so there's no conflict of meaning. But if we want to put in idling as well as running, we could do so.
Well, I think that's fine, but now that I'm reading this, the last clause, this provision specifically excludes the operation of licensed company vehicles. So if they're idling their trucks, those are company vehicles, and it's excluded from this whole paragraph, is the way I read
good
it.
point.
So what
So what are we talking about?
are we talking about here?
Is
Sorry.
is there an assumption in this whole section that you're the property owner and not a tenant?
Yeah, it has to be the
Mhm.
owner.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have that provision. I don't think you can exclude or preclude someone who's leasing a property.
Well, that's what I'm asking. When there's all
Yeah.
these, when there's these suggestions about residents or resident of the town, if you can't exclude, then there needs to be something in here that said, if you're leasing the property, you need to have permission from the property owner or something by the property owner. 'Cause these special permits stay with the property, they don't go with the business. And that's why I personally haven't seen one, Noreen, where someone's come in as a tenant.
Right.
But when reading this now where it says you have to be a resident, and
Is
I'm
that
thinking,
something we
well,
want to allow?
no, but I just want to make sure that I think that specifically should be in here somewhere.
Well,
Well,
we do have at his or her residence. So
Yeah,
there's I think there's two different things, is what we didn't want to exclude was people who are renting an apartment or own a condo. That is still their residence. They can still, have a home-based business. But what you're saying, I believe, is what if someone wants to rent their neighbor's?
Well, anybody
Yard?
can have, I mean, a home-based business, like you're working from home and using a computer, no one's gonna make any sense of that. And quite honestly, as far as condominiums, there's a lot of rules and regulations against it anyways, but we're dealing with a lot of these cases where they're actually doing a special permitted business. On the ones I've been on, they've always been the property owner, but just reading this, looking at this from a member of the public, I could look at this saying, wait a sec, I'm leasing a home. I'm gonna apply under this, but I don't own the property and the permit stays with the property. There should be something in here that if it is allowed for a tenant, they also would need to comply with permission from the actual property owner
Right, so,
control of the property, copy the lease, etc.
right, well, so anybody that is coming in for any type of permission from the zoning board has to clear that hurdle anyway. So we
So
don't,
what, so if I rent a property and I show up and I say, here's my lease, I've got a 3-year lease, I'm a legal tenant,
no, you have to have written permission from the homeowner
but where does it say that in here
Well-
is my question?
to go before zoning.
But I
Because
guess,
home,
does it
home
matter
occupation-
whether you're renting a home or an apartment? What would be the difference?
No, I think, so here's the other part is if I'm say I'm a renter and I'm a home-based business, and when I leave, there's not any clue that the next tenant might similarly want to do a business. So I think in actuality, you are granting the special permit for a use to a specific individual. And it's taken.
aren't these, Noreen, though, aren't these based on specific individual at a specific property address? If I move, if I'm at one property and move, I can't take my permit with me. It's
Yeah.
all, these are based on one property. So my just question is,
Right.
maybe it doesn't apply. If a member of the public is reading this, will they get the idea that if they lease a property, they can apply under this?
Yeah, why not? Zoning only applies to uses. It doesn't apply to ownership.
Right, so
so,
I think
uh,
the other part too here is where you're granting somebody a special permit. You can certainly have a clause in there that states that this is granted to this person for this purpose only. And that should, the person move or business is extinguished, that's the end of the permit, right?
But we have it highlighted right here. The special
Yeah.
permit shall be issued to the applicant only for their residence.
Not transferable.
Yeah, not transferable. You can't move it. But, and.
Yeah, so that's
I
fine.
agree with you, But I just
But
don't-
in that section, if the applicant is a tenant, where does it say they need permission from the landlord or the owner of the property?
Doesn't. It
That's
doesn't.
my question. Should there be some kind of reference that if they're leasing the property, it has to show that this is an allowed use? Or,
But
what are they actually showing? Like on a special permit on a regular property, of course, you get the paperwork signs that says you have control of the property, et cetera. Most leases nowadays won't allow these uses.
But didn't Noreen just say that the Board of Appeals will not act on any special permit, not just for a home occupation, but any special permit without the owner's assent? Didn't she say
Consent,
that?
correct, period. Yeah, that's our separate requirement. I don't think that you can properly burden tenants. They have a contract with their landowner, right? The property owner. So
Correct.
property owner can still enforce on anything they want, separate from what the zoning board grants or not.
No, I understand, but is there any acknowledgement in here? I know it's the zoning board's practice that says you need consent of.
Well, it's our requirement. So you can't file for a toothpick if you
So
don't.
should it be reflected in here somewhere?
It would have to be
No,
reflected in every single special permit that goes before the ZBA then.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
is.
If
We're-
you
It
have
is.
a blanket requirement, in which I think Noreen has just said that
Yes.
any special permit that's filed by a renter, they have to have a signed permission by
Consent
the
from-
owner to file that application and to
Correct.
do whatever it is they want. That
Correct.
covers their entire bylaw. You
Yeah.
don't have to put it into separate
No.
sections.
Could
Yeah.
I just ask a question? Noreen, where does that provision appear in the bylaws? Does it?
So that would be under the state requirements.
I thought we were trying to make this a usable document. How is any applicant going to know that? It should be in some general provision that applies to all special permits.
And that's what I was trying to get to. Charlotte,
Right,
when you
so
said
those,
specifically,
the
it's
require,
need to know.
right, so the requirements about how you file with the zoning board is not laid out within the bylaw.
Is it laid out in the zoning board rules and regulations?
Yes,
the application,
then that's
that's,
okay.
that's where you would find it.
That's where you.
right,
that's
right.
fine.
So
That's the
the-
normal place you would find it.
exactly. So you don't want to replicate that within the bylaw. And the other part too is that, you know, the zoning board does have the right to amend its rules and regulations, and that would be separate from the print of the bylaw.
Okay, but the zoning board doesn't have the right to set policies. They have to go to the town meeting in order to make it a policy. So you're saying this is a
No.
practice of the zoning board?
No,
No.
No, that's not
No.
true. They can create their own rules and regulations. They're allowed to under chapter 48.
So it's in 48 that it says all that.
Yes,
no,
Yeah.
40, rules and regulations of the planning board or the zoning board or everything are their own documents, and they can hold it, they have to hold a public hearing to amend it or add to it. So it's not anything in 40A that they have to refer to, it's what rules and regulations they're adopting,
They've adopted.
including the application.
right. But what I'm suggesting is that you don't want to put that in cement in the bylaw because it doesn't comport with what the zoning board is allowed to do. In other words, there are special rules and regulations that guide how they can change their rules and regulations. But it's not something that would go before town meeting. And nor should it be that if the zoning board needs to institute a change, that they would want to go before town meeting, because that's, you know, that's not called for.
But that is written currently in our rules and regulations, that sentence, that we require property owner consent.
Correct. So nobody
Okay.
can apply, because here's the thing is that,
No, as long as it's covered in there,
Yeah.
Noreen, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure it was, because I didn't see it last
Yeah.
time I looked, probably just missed it.
yep, nobody goes through us without having permission from the property owner.
All right, is there any other section within this document that we want to review, discuss, change, anything I missed? Obviously, you can always email me as well. But if there is not, then I will save this and we can shift our focus to municipal uses.
So Michaela, can you send me your updated draft when you get all these changes made, and then I'll use that document to read through it and make any suggestions or questions I have to back to you.
Yep, absolutely. I'll try and get these changes done, hopefully this afternoon, and I'll try and get them over to you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Stop sharing then. All right, and so having heard no complaints, we will switch over to municipal uses. Hopefully everyone got the discussion paper that Bob sent, that I sent to everybody, and was able to do the homework assigned. So, you know, I'll let Bob kind of steer it, but, you know, obviously there's a couple issues with the municipal uses. There's some, just to read his document, there's some inconsistent languages. There's inconsistency with even the uses. Let's see, I think I even had a quick example for people if need be, but I'll let Bob do that while I fumble with documents over here.
Thanks, Michaela. So this is the second discussion paper on municipal uses, one of the priority items identified by the work group. And in some ways, this reflects the same kind of problems that are present for other topics in the bylaw. Inconsistency, some questions about why certain language is in certain places. seemingly some missing aspects to this. And you can read the issue bullet points, but the biggest question here really is, how does the town want to approach municipal uses? And towns do it all kinds of different ways, and you can do a mix of ways, and you have a mix of ways, because in some zoning districts, you just have a broad category that says municipal uses are allowed in this district. And then in other zoning districts, you have a list. And that list is not the same from, it has some same topics and uses, but not all the same from zoning category to zoning category. And that could be just a reflection of how they were developed over the years and how they were amended over the years. But there's no obvious, to me anyway, reason why this use is in this zone and that use is not. Then the other aspect of it is there are uses. In each zoning district, you have a category called municipal uses, like special permit uses and accessory uses and permitted uses. But beyond the uses that are listed in the municipal use category, often like in the community use category, or sometimes even in the permitted use or special permit use, there are other kinds of uses listed there that could be municipal. And I gave you some examples: schools, museums, cemeteries. They could be municipal uses, but they're not listed in municipal uses. They're listed kind of in different other kind of categories. And some of those uses could be private uses, or they could be public uses. But you don't make a distinction, except for some small distinctions you make in the residential zoning category, where you do list private versus public. So that's another part of the issue. And then sort of, I guess, on the missing side of thing, municipal uses are not the only public uses. There are federal public uses, there are state public uses, there are county public uses. Your bylaw doesn't address that. And I'm guessing you have probably some uses that are public but are not municipal.
Yes.
So
Well, the
other,
steamship authority.
yeah, steamship authority. Yeah, so I shouldn't have guessed. I should have known, right? You have the steamship authority, probably other things. So other bylaws will use the term government uses or public uses more than you see municipal uses. And then other bylaws are along a spectrum from having, on one end, kind of very flexible, municipal uses are allowed anywhere, period, or municipal uses are allowed with site plan review or something, to the other side where they try to create the list. This use is listed here, allowed here, not here, that use is allowed in this zoning district. And then others have a mix, of how they're in the middle of the spectrum with some blanket uses allowed and others more specified or more micromanaged. So, really what are the issues that have come up, if any, about municipal uses in the town over the last decade or 2 decades? Has it been a problem? Are there controversies about them, or what? So what's the problem? What are you trying to solve? And how do you want to think about this?
I have one suggestion, or maybe I would go with the essentially umbrella category where you're, however you want to express the municipal public / government. I think it's in the town's best interest to be very vague, all encompassing for that, because you don't ever know ahead what you're going to want or need. And typically all those things that you mentioned, like let's just pick on schools, are going to go through a substantial public process, which includes the select board. And it's probably not in the town's best interests to tie the town's hands from proceeding with something, fire station, whatever it is, that's, carefully thought out and planned.
If I might, I forgot one other item. you also have a zoning district called public use zoning district. It doesn't have a purpose, so I don't know why it was created. And I went on the website and looked at your zoning map, but looking at the zoning map on a website, it was really hard to tell where the zoning, the public use district was located, at least
Right.
for me, because it gets really tiny. So not knowing where it was located or why it was located there, I don't know why you have a public use district and whether that has any influence or not on how you treat municipal uses.
I think it's just left over from a long time ago. They probably saw a public use and just created a public use district around it.
Would be,
Yeah, it may have been spot zoning, don't you?
There probably was.
Yeah,
Well, I could be reading the zoning map wrong, because the zoning map I have is very tiny and I'm relying on colors. But it looks like everything around our reservoir is public use. A whole, everything up north of 151, a big chunk of the aquifer and what abuts Otis is public use. And then the others do appear to be randomly spotted here and there. But the public use table that we've got, we allow everything on public use. You can build a house, you can do anything you want. We don't exclude anything. And as it has been pointed out by the Bobs, there's no definition.
Well, in the case of the Long Pond, there are deed restrictions and other restrictions on uses in there that are not in the zoning bylaw. Anything north of Route 151 is probably state-owned. But I agree. I don't know what, there may be a better answer.
just to clarify, based on Charlotte's comment just now, the sections of the various zoning districts that I have included in this paper that show municipal uses of community, these are just excerpts of the entire district. They are not the
Right.
entire district, and not the entire list of uses. They're only list of uses that are labeled either municipal uses or could be municipal uses, but they're in a different category. So there's a whole lot of uses in all these zoning districts that aren't shown here because they wouldn't fall into the municipal public use category.
So Bob, would it make sense to sort of chunk this up a bit and talk about, the idea of municipal versus government versus public? Would it make sense to start there and try to decide how we want to term these things?
Well, or would it make sense to start, these are what the Bobs have identified for us are the ones that are in all the other zones. If we start with the one that's labeled right now in our existing bylaw as the public use district and take a look at that, do we need that? Does it serve any purpose? What does it mean? So we have sort of a broad understanding of public to include municipal, state, and federal. Apparently it's any government use. It doesn't say. And then we could go to the individual ones and see if they're even necessary. You'd have to go to your own, I don't think we got printed out, sent the public use one. We got sent pieces of it. In the public use district, the community service uses and the municipal uses, but what strike me as the anomalies in the public use district is we allow everything else. So it's not restricted to public use. Frank, why would we have that whole section on public use?
I don't know, it's historical, I'm sure, but if there's no limit, then it's basically not a zoning district at all, if
Right.
everything's allowed.
Right. And I don't know who has access right now to their zoning books to take a look at it. But there's a section in it called special permit uses. That strikes me as bizarre. You can have, once again, it's just, it opens the door to any kind of conceivable use. Have these ever come up to the zoning board of appeals? In public?
I
use
don't think
districts?
we've had a lot of public use. I'm actually surprised that you allow like single family homes in an area zone public use. So here's the thing is if you have an existing home, somebody would obviously have a right to replace it, right? But, you know, when you're looking at area around Long Pond, I mean, I kind of think that the purpose there is to protect that land and that you don't want to sort of wave a flag and say, come on down, right?
You know, I think it would be interesting, and maybe this is, and you can agree or disagree, but it would be interesting to actually do a little quick study, i.e. the planning staff, sorry, guys. What land is actually in the public use district, and is all of that land or most of that land publicly owned or not? And it might explain, if it's all publicly owned, then you're not going to get people filing special permits to do commercial buildings or whatnot. But if it's not publicly owned, what is actually, you know, is there some obvious other reason why that land is zoned for public use? Because that would then, you know, help you to think about, is this district okay? If it's just publicly owned land, then you could just keep it. It's not harming anything. But if it's beyond that, then that raises questions.
That's interesting to know. We should know that, I think.
And we can do that. That's not hard.
Yeah, we'd have to know that before we could do any kind of thinking about it. And within that, I don't know if this makes it too big.
Well,
a-
I just found one public use that looks like it's privately owned, just based off GIS map. There looks like there's a couple that are public use that are not owned by the town.
Are they owned by the state? Are they owned by some other government entity?
This is Lawrence Trustee John.
Okay, so it's a person.
This one is Con Trustee Renee. This one is Town of Falmouth.
Is that land in the public use district,
Yeah, I can,
but it's privately owned?
give me 1 second. I'm happy to share my screen. I have the GIS map, so just give me 1 second, please. So for example, I know that this goes into LIA as well, but a large portion of it is in the public use, the PU district over here.
Where are we? Okay. I can't read the streets.
I
Uh,
think that's proximate to maybe former Cranberry Bog.
Perez Way, Sinrock Circle, East Falmouth Highway is here. Here we go.
Okay, so that is the Cranberry Bog.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
All right.
this one was another example.
That's the fire station.
This one is?
Isn't it the fire station?
On Boxbury Hill Road? No.
65 East Falmouth Highway.
Well, there's a little, that little spot right
Or is it
there.
a cemetery? Oh, It's a cemetery out back.
Okay, yeah, the church owns the
It's a cemetery.
section in the back, yeah.
Mhm.
That's town of Falmouth. So. That's the church.
You know, it might also include town of Falmouth conservation land.
And there's a lot, as you can see here, there's a lot of really small public use properties. They're single, they're single properties, but
Yeah,
they're all scattered around here.
I think that was clearly spot zoning. There was something there. They just wanted to protect it.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, because there's a whole bunch of just kind of scattered about.
Well, no,
But anyway, just to give,
Woods Hole.
I'm sorry, what was that, Charlotte?
There are several in Woods Hole, and two of them at least are of considerable size compared to these little cemeteries and things.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
steamship
that looks
property?
like where the oceanographic is, maybe?
Yeah, Marine Biological Laboratory.
Mhm.
Can you see, as you're looking at it, Michaela, any sign that there are residences on these pieces of property?
Oh, looks like it would be a no on this one.
Because I'm wondering what the impact would be if we, on the public use district
Yes.
itself, we disallow things like residential uses.
Yeah, I'd have to go through because like this is Woods Hole, but I mean, if I just look at it quick, then yes, it looks like there's a house, but it's owned by Woods Hole, so it's their general accounting office. So
That would look like a house because it was an old house.
yeah, because like it says the number of bedrooms. So when I look quick, I'm like, yeah, there's a house. And then I'm like, wait, no, it's not.
No.
So I'm happy to show anyone else anything else on the GIS map. I just wanted to kind of bring up where some of the, so people had a look at the map. So I'm happy to stop sharing so people can get their screen back.
So there's a lot of public use,
Oh,
but it's small and spotty all over the place.
Except for Long Pond, the educational things in Woods Hole, and the area just north of 151.
Mhm.
And there's a spot over there by the fairgrounds also,
Yes.
south of 151. What would be the effect going forward on this public use district chart to disallow residential uses, other permitted uses, accessory uses, the things that are not clearly community or municipal?
Well, though you may want to, at some point in time, allow a housing development, maybe affordable housing on a public use property, depending on where it is too. So,
But you can do that under 40B, so why
Yeah.
should we?
oh
be
yeah,
too
of
concerned
course.
about it?
Yeah.
But you might want to exclude 40B,
No,
but allow public housing, which is different.
You
Yeah.
can't
do that.
You can't exclude 40B.
Oh, too bad.
Nice try, Charlotte.
It was.
Yeah,
Oh.
Charlotte, just to answer your question, if you took out those uses from the district and there were actually some of those uses in existence, they could still remain in existence. And they could still be a house or a commercial, whatever, but they would become non-conforming. So, if they wanted to expand, they'd have to, come to the ZBA for, or if they wanted to change from one non-conforming use to another, they'd come to the ZBA. It'd be no different than any other non-conforming use that you have in town.
But you couldn't add any new ones, maybe.
Right,
No, well,
right.
if we can't make the public use district useful by excluding some things, should we get rid of it if everything is allowed?
Well, you might, I don't know, I don't know what the answer to that. could
There's
be.
too many, that's a little scary right now. Now that we know how many public
Mhm.
use districts there are, I wouldn't suggest we get rid of the district until there'd be too many unintended consequences.
And what
Okay,
would we
then how
replace?
are we going to define it?
You know, that's
So, I mean, again, if you can come up with a list of the properties and who owns them, and, you know, what they're used for, to get a complete picture of what is in the public use district. Again, if most everything is publicly owned, then you might only be dealing with a handful of public use districts that are not publicly owned. And then do you just leave them alone, or do you rezone them to whatever the adjoining zoning district is?
So it feels like we've sort of carved out another homework assignment, public use district to add to our sort of roadmap, if you will.
Jed, yeah, I would agree with you. I think
Seems like a
we need
larger.
to add that, look at public uses, because if that is something that we want to do, which is, you know, get rid of public use, I think we're going to need to go through and carefully look at what that would mean if we obviously rezone those areas with a neighboring zone, what those externalities may mean for those areas. If everyone's good with the bylaw, I'll take it down so we can have the full screen back. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
So Bob, is the intent with this municipal use discussion to essentially have the same list of uses? So a consistent list of uses to include stuff like fire station, police station, school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that would be potentially allowed by right in all of the districts, or at least have that discussion? Is that the intent of?
Yeah, Rob, that's certainly one of the questions before you. You know, I'm assuming there are certain uses, one way or another, that are okay in the town, police stations and fire stations. Although I actually came across, working for a town a number of years ago, they didn't allow police stations or fire stations anywhere in town. And they didn't know that. So that was one of the changes they had to make. But yeah, so there may be some uses, town halls, police stations, community buildings, you know, whatever, that you want to have everywhere. There may be other uses that are okay. There may be more of a kind of a commercial type of public use that might be okay in the business districts, but not in you know, some of the residential districts. That's the kind of the sorting that you might want to think about doing here. If you're not going to go to just, yeah, all public uses are okay anywhere. Then you got to start, you know, slicing and dicing.
Okay. I mean, it seems like, you know, we could probably do the same sort of format that we did with home occupation. We meet, you know, without the Bobs, we sort of figure out that consensus with our group, and then come back with the Bobs at a future meeting.
Yeah.
Well, we've only got 15 minutes left. I think one of the, following up on Jeb's recommendation, which is, the process we're going to have to follow. If we take the list of issues that Bob and Bob gave to us and number them, there are 8 of them. And of the 8, the inconsistent language can be fixed pretty readily just by settling on one kind of list. Some of them are bigger problems than others. Number 5 and number 7. Looks like the review is needed by the town as to what municipal uses should be allowed or not in the various zoning districts. That's what the study group will be taking on. But maybe with this 15 minutes, we could have at least a discussion about, do we need a public use district? Yes, we've decided we can't get rid of it. How are we going to define it? And if people could think about that and make some suggestions now, that would be helpful in working out the others.
Charlotte, I think it's going to be difficult. At least my brain is going to have a difficult time dealing with that until I know what is on those various properties. Because if they are all like little pocket parks that have been donated for Parkland because somebody wanted to get rid of some money and that kind of stuff, if it's the institutions down in Woods Hole, which is a public institution, one could say. I don't know if NOAA is considered under there or not, but I'd really like to know what all those pieces are for. We've got a lot of little pieces of conservation land around here that are just little bitty pieces. And if that tends to be the public use, beaches, then that gives us some just guidance for definition.
This public use zone map is very different from the 300 committee map of conservation areas. I don't think that's what it is. I think-
Could any, like Pat said, could any of these smaller parcels be something that was left to the town and maybe deeded as public use? I think you need to identify all of the public use parcels, and then once you know what all of them are, you'll have a list of what they've been used for now, or what their intent was if it was something that was left for the town. And then that will give you that will basically give you your definition of what those areas are currently used for. And then if you see anything that's overlapping with one of the other definitions, then you might be able to switch some of those out. But without knowing what all of the properties are that are listed in public use, it's too difficult to come up with a definition that encompasses everything.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question that kind of goes to this. There seems to be 2 different formats where we group list them in like a paragraph form in some sections, and then we list out the municipal uses in separate sections. Sorry to keep doing this, but let me just share my screen really quick. If that's okay.
It's part of the inconsistencies, Michaela.
Yeah. So for example, in Falmouth municipal uses, we list armory, fire, police station, government. And then in the Marine District, we have it itemized out, museum, or excuse me, I'm sorry, under municipal, we have beach, park and playground, recreation, town forest, town wharf. So we have two different formats for it. One is a group lump sum, and then one is itemized out. Does the group have an opinion on kind of how they? I can show you on the let's see. Yeah, so right here under public use, for example, we have it grouped together like this, and they're all yeses. So whereas, for example, in Marine District, we have it kind of, each one gets their own one, and it's a yes next to it.
Where would
If you don't have
something
an
like,
opinion on it, that's fine too. It just, with only a little bit left, I thought I'd kind of try and hit a low hanging fruit.
Where would something like a pumping station for town sewer be listed under, or is that different because they would get some kind of a utility easement? You know, we're expanding the town sewer in a lot of these cases, we're putting up pumping stations. You know, for example, I'm in the Falmouth Heights one, there's one next to Walmart. There's something related to it on Worcester Court. There's one at the harbor. Does that have to be included in anything here?
Bob, just my experience is that generally, and probably almost universally, infrastructure type things, pumping stations, you know, sewer lines, or, you know, whatever, you know, falls under the category of infrastructure tend not to be in zoning bylaws.
Okay, I was just wondering, because the pumping stations are large, they're not, you know, they're more,
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't,
the one next to, like you say, on Springboro Road, you know, looks like a very large shed or a small house. And I mean, I only bring it up now for something that people think about, because we know that we're going to be doing large expansions on the sewer network over the next, you know, who knows how many years. And I assume that more and more of those structures are going to have to appear somewhere. And I just didn't know if that needed to be included in anything, or if that's just handled by some kind of a special easement or situation with the town.
I think it's handled by the planning process. For example, on the T-Ticket Acapesket Sewer Service Area, they're looking for parcels that are already zoned for business or some other place where it can go.
Okay,
They're
Right,
not
but-
really,
Yeah, but I think in talking wastewater super, some of where they're going to look at is what they may have access to or not.
Right.
So there is a possibility that depending on where and what setbacks, et cetera, excuse me, that they may need to come before zoning.
for a change.
Yes,
zoning
I would,
change.
right, but I guess what I would say is that, you know, clearly for a municipal purpose, the zoning board is going to look obviously more favorably upon something that is by the town for the town, right? And that you aren't going to necessarily be able to zone in advance for where they may have access to put a pumping station.
No, the location of a pumping station is so sensitive. It has to be at a certain spot in the system, otherwise it won't work.
What about the buildings that have to be, they're quite large actually, in connection with the wind turbines bringing the energy ashore?
You're gonna be underground.
Yeah, but they wind up needing a pretty big building on land, somewhere on their way toward the bridge. What would those buildings be called, and what would the zoning for them be?
Are you referring to like a substation, Charlotte?
I think that's what they're calling them, substations. It's some sort of station for the energy transformers. I don't know what will be in those buildings.
Yeah, I think they've looked, it's not just a building. I think they've looked at a pretty large layout to provide for that, and that they've looked at, I think even like Lawrence Lynch property possibility, because they need a huge amount of space and they need to be away from residential uses. And yeah, I don't know how you're going to prepare for that.
Well, it seems to me they're pretty obviously industrial, but they're not conveniently located for the industrial park. That hasn't been the suggestion for them so far.
Yeah, I think again, that's going to be one of those circumstances where there's going to be some limit to where they can be cited, and, you know, it'll be a negotiation with the town about whether the town wants to support where and what they propose.
They have to be located near power lines.
Exactly.
Right.
And if they're not near a power line, they just have to be near power lines.
yeah, I mean, you do have to think about unintended consequences when you're dealing with infrastructure and zoning, because as Frank has pointed out a couple of times now, you know, a pumping station has to be in a certain spot. the wind turbine transmission, facilities have to be in certain spots. So it's one of those things that they're not looking at zoning so much as they're looking at the land and the land form and the elevation of the land and the connection to the power lines or the connection to the sewer lines or things of that nature.
Well, they're looking now to go underground through the heights in
Mhm.
some fashion, but it will
Right.
involve a lot of
Right.
digging to get it there. What connection does that have to zoning?
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlotte, right now, the understanding that I have is that, the zoning comes into play with the substation location. And that's only if, and Frank, help me out here, but it's only if the siting board at the state level decides that we get to have say in that. But that's a topic that, I should just pre-warn everyone, that's really not on our agenda today. And let's try to stick to the recodification effort here, but noting that we've only got, 7 minutes left, maybe we can start talking about the next meeting that we want to talk about these municipal uses, and then schedule another meeting for where we want to bring our homework back to the Bobs.
Okay, I didn't mean to drag us off. I just thought if it were anything, it would be a public use.
It is a public use in a sense that it's a utility, but it's also privately owned.
Right.
And the energy, as Jed has commented, the Energy Facility Siting Board, to my understanding, can make a decision even if it's contrary to local zoning, because they have that authority.
Oh,
Yeah, or there's a provision in the 40A that a public service utility corporation can go to the Department of Public Utilities to override zoning if the town is trying to use zoning to block a necessary public utility.
so future meetings. The next meeting, I guess, will be the working group in town to continue on with municipal uses.
Yes,
Would that be true?
yes.
Want to continue meeting on Wednesdays?
Yep. So possibly looking at maybe June 8th. So it won't be able to be next week. It's gonna take a little bit of time just to kind of get the information, review it. To be able to get a list of the properties, who owns them.
June 8th is fine.
June 8th, okay.
I'm good for the 8th.
Okay,
I don't have my calendar in front of me, sorry.
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm good for the 8th too. And just as a notation, so I'm leaving the zoning board as of June 9th. So I won't be back as a representative of the zoning board after that date. So I can make the June 8th. I don't know what the ability is to take part as a member of the public or not. I'll wait to see if there's any comment on that later on. But just to know that I won't physically be here as part of the board after June 9th.
We'll just give you private assignments, Bob.
There you go.
I don't think that's a problem, Bob. This board, this group is not put together by the selectmen or anything. We're not appointed. It's actually. I
Yeah,
think
so if you end
I-
up keeping me, if you keep me on the list, I'll
Yeah.
still participate. I just won't be participating as a member of the zoning board.
No, but I
Okay.
think your experience on the zoning board is very valuable because you have insights that not everybody else has.
Right, I agree, Frank.
Right. I'm glad you're willing.
At this point, it's been so long, you might as well finish.
Right.
Okay,
Okay,
so tentatively June 8th, 11
Right.
to 1.
right.
Bob Mitchell, you are off the hook to attend that meeting. You're welcome to come, but.
Well, yeah, even if I wanted to come, I am not available at
Okay.
all that day for the entire day. So,
Okay,
All
bye,
right,
everybody.
bye, everyone.
Bye.
thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.